Did you know the Titanic was never officially declared unsinkable? It's a common misconception that the Titanic was marketed as the ship that could never sink. But the truth is a bit more nuanced. The ship, a marvel of early 20th century engineering, was constructed to be as safe as possible. The Titanic's design featured a double-bottomed hull and 16 watertight compartments designed to close at the flick of a switch. These innovative safety measures were in place to protect against flooding in the event of a hull breach. Such features were unprecedented for the time, leading to a sense of invincibility around the ship. As the Titanic was being built, the public's fascination with this colossal vessel grew. Its size, elegance, and perceived safety features sparked conversations and created a buzz. The public began to view the Titanic as a symbol of man's triumph over nature, an unsinkable ship in the vast, unpredictable ocean. Adding to this perception was a phrase that appeared in an article published by the Shipbuilder magazine. The article, discussing the Titanic's superior design and structural integrity, referred to the ship as practically unsinkable. This phrase was picked up by the press and soon the myth was born. The Titanic, in the public's eye, became the unsinkable ship. However, the White Star Line, the company that owned and operated the Titanic, never officially declared the ship to be unsinkable in its advertising or documentation. The term unsinkable was more a product of public perception and media exaggeration than an official designation. While the Titanic was indeed built to be extraordinarily safe, the belief in its invincibility was tragically misplaced. The ship's fate served as a harsh reminder of the power of nature and the limits of human engineering. So, the Titanic was practically unsinkable, but not officially declared so. What if I told you the Titanic's fatal journey was its maiden voyage? Indeed, the Titanic set sail for the very first time on April 10, 1912. Departing from the bustling port of Southampton, England, this behemoth of a ship was destined for the shores of the Big Apple, New York City. The Titanic was no ordinary vessel. It was a floating palace, a testament to human ingenuity, and was hailed as the Unsinkable Ship. With this title, it carried the weight of immense anticipation and excitement. Aboard the Titanic were some of the era's most affluent individuals. Among these notable passengers were John Jacob Astor IV, one of the richest men in the world, and the esteemed fashion designer, Lady Duff Gordon. Not to mention the managing director of the White Star Line, J. Bruce Ismay, who was making the transatlantic journey on his company's crowning glory. The Titanic was also a vessel of dreams for many of the third-class passengers, who saw this voyage as a gateway to a prosperous new life in America. Despite the class divide, the excitement was palpable among all, as they prepared to embark on this historic journey aboard the world's most luxurious liner. The atmosphere was electric as the Titanic pulled away from the dock, waving off the cheers and well-wishes from those gathered to witness this monumental event. The air was thick with promise, and the ship was filled with laughter, clinking glasses, and the soft hum of excited chatter. It was a scene of joy and anticipation, a testament to the human spirit's relentless pursuit of progress. Little did they know the maiden voyage of the Titanic would be its last. The ship that was built to outshine all others, the ship that was thought to be invincible, was about to be embroiled in one of the most infamous maritime disasters in history. The voyage that was supposed to be a triumphant crossing turned into a historic tragedy. How could the Titanic's disaster have been avoided if iceberg warnings were heeded? It's a question that has haunted historians and enthusiasts for over a century. Let's dive into the chilling tale of the ignored warnings that preceded the Titanic's fateful encounter with an iceberg. On April 14, 1912, the Titanic received multiple iceberg warnings from other ships in the area. These included the Caronia, the Baltic, and the Californian. Despite these warnings, the decision was made to continue at full speed, a choice that has been scrutinized and debated for years. Why were these warnings ignored? The reasons can be traced back to a dangerous cocktail of hubris, ambition, and an unwavering faith in technology. Firstly, the Titanic was touted as the unsinkable ship. This belief stemmed from its state-of-the-art design, featuring 16 watertight compartments. Many believed that these compartments made the ship impervious to disaster, allowing complacency to creep into the decision-making process. Secondly, there was an immense pressure to make a quick crossing. The Titanic was not just a ship, it was a symbol of human achievement, a testament to our mastery over nature. The desire to establish a transatlantic speed record, coupled with the belief in the ship's invincibility, led to a disregard for the iceberg warnings. But the warnings were not just dismissed out of hand, some measures were taken in response. For instance, the ship's course was slightly adjusted to a more southerly route. However, these efforts were woefully inadequate. The Titanic was still steaming ahead near its maximum speed when it struck the iceberg. The consequences of this decision were catastrophic. The ship that was believed to be unsinkable ended up at the bottom of the North Atlantic, taking with it over 1,500 lives. This tragedy serves as a stark reminder of the limits of human arrogance and the unforgiving nature of the sea. Ignoring the iceberg warnings was a fatal decision that led to an unimaginable disaster. This statement not only encapsulates the tragedy of the Titanic but also serves as a timeless lesson about the dangers of ignoring warnings and overestimating our own abilities. Why were there not enough lifeboats on the unsinkable Titanic, you ask? Well, the answer to that lies in a tragic combination of complacency, outdated safety regulations, and a misguided belief in the ship's invincibility. When the Titanic set sail, she carried only 20 lifeboats, far less than what was needed to accommodate all her passengers and crew. This was due to the prevailing maritime safety regulations of the time, which were woefully outdated and based on the gross tonnage of a ship rather than its passenger capacity. The British Board of Trade, responsible for these regulations, had not revised them since 1894, nearly 2 decades before the Titanic's maiden voyage. The rules stipulated that British vessels over 10,000 tons must carry at least 16 lifeboats. The Titanic, despite being nearly 5 times that size and carrying more than 3,000 people, was only required to carry 16 lifeboats. In a misguided attempt at compliance, the Titanic carried 4 additional lifeboats, bringing the total to 20. However, this was still woefully inadequate for the number of people on board. This oversight was not due to lack of awareness. The ship's designers and builders knew that the Titanic could carry up to 64 lifeboats. However, they chose not to, partly due to aesthetic reasons and partly because they genuinely believed that the Titanic was unsinkable. The inadequate number of lifeboats became a grim reality when the Titanic hit an iceberg and started sinking. With only enough lifeboats for about half the passengers, many people were left stranded on the sinking ship. This lack of lifeboats led to an unnecessary loss of life, with over 1,500 people perishing in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. The tragic sinking of the Titanic served as a stark reminder of the dangers of complacency and overconfidence. It prompted a complete overhaul of maritime safety regulations, ensuring that such a disaster would never occur again. The lack of lifeboats was a glaring oversight that contributed to the high death toll. It's a sobering reminder of how important it is to always prepare for the worst, even when we believe the worst could never happen. What changes did the Titanic disaster bring about in maritime safety? That's a question that resonates even today, more than a century after the unsinkable ship met her tragic end. In the immediate aftermath of the disaster, there was an outpouring of public grief and outrage. People were appalled by the sheer loss of life, but what made it even more shocking was the fact that the tragedy could have been prevented. The Titanic's tale sparked a swift and significant response, and the maritime world would never be the same again. The Titanic disaster led to a complete overhaul of maritime safety regulations. One of the key changes was the introduction of the International Convention for the Safety of Life at Sea, or SOLAS. This international treaty mandates the minimum safety measures that ships must adhere to, from construction to equipment to crew training. One of the most significant outcomes of SOLAS was the establishment of the International Ice Patrol. Tasked with monitoring iceberg danger in the North Atlantic, the Ice Patrol was a direct response to the iceberg that sank the Titanic. Today, thanks to the vigilant efforts of the Ice Patrol, ships can navigate these treacherous waters with a greater sense of security. Another crucial change was in lifeboat requirements. The Titanic, despite her size, had lifeboats for less than half of her passengers and crew. This was due to outdated regulations that were based on the size of the ship rather than the number of people on board. After the disaster, SOLAS regulations mandated that all ships must carry enough lifeboats for everyone on board. This simple yet vital change has undoubtedly saved countless lives since then. The Titanic disaster was undoubtedly a tragedy of monumental proportions, but out of that tragedy came reform and a commitment to ensuring such a disaster would not happen again. The legacy of the Titanic is not just one of loss, but also of change and improvement. The Titanic disaster was a wake-up call that led to significant improvements in maritime safety.